good does it get, SK?
Why not us, Charlie?
Today, live from the Pinecrest Inn, it's the Smylie Show. So long, everybody.
This is the Smylie Show.
Welcome back to another episode of the Smylie Show. And for those of you who are tuning in for a recap of the Charles Schwab Challenge of the Colonial, just know that we are going to get to that at some point in time as Smylie is traveling from the West Coast back to the East Coast. We think we're going to get maybe a little quick recap, 15 minutes on the Charles Schwab from an airport. Maybe we'll see how that comes about. You got some big things going on at Pebble this week. And by the way, are you excited? Like, which courses are we playing and how are we feeling about the game?
I'm playing Pebble Beach, and I think the tee time is like 6 a.m., which is a concern. I've been kind of going back and forth in my brain of what I'm going to hit off the first tee, because it's clearly a club. Like, I would like to hit driver, but at 6 a.m., I just don't think with not knowing the breakfast ball situation, like, do we just hit 3-iron out there into the left rough and miss the green with an 8-iron? Like, I just, and like, if you're playing this hole at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, it's a driver all day. It's a flip wedge. You're probably making birdies. So at 6 a.m., are we gonna start on the defensive, or are we just gonna?
Well, hold on now, because don't you have to cut it at? I mean, you have to cut that if you're gonna hit driver. Are you worried about a left or right shot shape? Have you drawn it recently? No, you're not. Okay, all right.
I can get on top of it with the driver. Hit that cut. I'm a little bit more concerned about doing it with like a 4-iron.
Got it. Okay. All right. We're just coming off recording with Josh Gregory. We were just talking about this to close the episode, so I want to get a temp check on that.
Yeah, my big thing is, I just jump to my front foot too fast sometimes when in the morning when I'm not moving quite as good, and I just get a little narrow. The face is wide open, and I'm having to do a little throw.
Well, this is perfect then, because if you get to the end of this episode and Smylie joins us from the airport, we're going to figure out what club you hit off the first tee at Pebble Beach at 6 a.m. We did this Walker Cup week. We got the first tee time off Pebble Beach, and I played with my brother David, my cousin Jamie McFarland, and our mid-teens. Ford probably was 14 at the time. Ford Apple, who had never played Pebble Beach before in his entire life. So we're warming up in the dark, and Jamie and David and I are like, what tees you guys want to play? And David said, like, why don't we just play the plates? Like, why don't we play the U.S. Open plates? And Ford's like, what? He went out and shot an honest-to-God 87 first time seeing Pebble Beach from the plates. It was one of the most impressive things I've ever seen in my life in the game of golf. So, Ford Apple, if you're listening, shout out to you, buddy.
There you go. Good stuff.
First tee time Pebble's so great, though.
I'm going out there. It's interesting. I know you've been out there a ton, and that just whole where the pro shop, the putting green, and all that around there. Everything is like Pebble Beach owned, from what I understand. There's like no other brands that have their own stores, but like Ralph Lauren's opening up a store right there in that whole area. Which, from the amount of traffic they get of people just walking around shopping at the pro shop, visiting Pebble Beach. I mean, why wouldn't you just do a little stop by? Like, hey, I'll swing by a Ralph Lauren and get. They're
gonna have some cool co-branded stuff, and I'd say I can't continue this episode without mentioning that it is the summer of cotton. So if you see any nice piqué kind of classic polos there,
you can do it out there. Like that's
what I'm saying.
That's actually a place where you can commit to it.
I'm committed. I'm committed regardless. I'm committed in 95-degree heat, 95% humidity. I'm committed wherever. It is the summer of cotton, and we're living in it. We're sweating through it. So
we're gonna start calling you Lucas Glover here pretty soon.
Listen, I would love to get the cotton pants. I don't know how to source cotton pants or shorts quite yet. So like, reach out if you have a good way to. I'm still on. I'm trying to get away from Big Polly. Man. That someone commented on that at something I posted recently. I'm like, yeah, if you want to see me practicing from inside of an oven, I'll wear a cotton shirt and rain shorts. But I
was talking to Jackson about this the other day. We both start out in a full rain suit. Like, this is a summer video.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
And for every birdie that you make, you get to remove an item of clothing or something. But for every bogey you make, you have to add back an item from your rain suit. So it's a huge emphasis on getting hot early. But the more bogeys you add, like, you keep on adding, like, now I got to put a toboggan on,
Yeah.
This is
getting hot early as a double entendre in this case. I deeply fear that, like, you're gonna finish the round in like your Ralph Lauren boxers and I'll be in a beekeeper suit. So
So
but
if
I
you're
love
a
the idea.
if you're a
I love the
hydration
idea.
company, we got the
Please.
concept for you.
Please. A lot of this good fun way to start the episode, Smiley. We have some some hashtag all caps B business to tend to here because we've
I'm
got
just picturing it. I'm still picturing this whole thing. Like honestly, we could get sunscreens involved too for like if I play well, then it's like, hey,
right.
then I'll full body sunscreen, but then I don't know if we'll be able to do it for you. Like we'll spray you, but it'll just repel like it's almost like a good ad for a rain gear, that it's just shooting off and we get a slow-mo of the sunscreen just completely repelling off. And I mean, that's, hey, we're selling concepts left and right here. Sorry, my brain's working.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love that we're workshopping this because I feel like actually if I'm going to commit to the bid, it should just be like more cotton things. So I can put like on a terry cloth, like cotton robe and like wrap a cotton bath towel, tuck it in and just really just soak it. Moving around like
are we riding?
Swing.
Are we walking?
No, walking. Carry your own bags too.
Well, what a mess, man.
All
right.
I love it.
I think people have got to see this now.
Yeah, investors, possibly you. If you're out there and you want to sponsor, we're open for biz.
If you're a nurse, we might need a nurse on site.
Married to one. So how about that?
All right, perfect.
Look at that, Amanda. Guess what? You're signed up. You're now the on-staff nurse for the Smylie Show. Well, yes. To get to the matters of business, Smylie, of which there are many. I mean, because of the rough outline we put together for the beginning of this episode, it includes the reported 2027 schedule. We're going to show you a screenshot here in a second that Josh Carpenter of the Sports Business Journal put together. He's been on top of this thing since the beginning. We have that. We have what the 2028 schedule could potentially look like. Some of that comes from Josh Carpenter's reporting as well, the 2 different tracks, things like that. And then we have just more and more on LIV. I mean, I've seen just in the past few hours this morning, time recording this is Thursday of Colonial Week, but
news stays hot.
The news stays hot. We're seeing everything from rumors that players do want to invest, as suggested by some, and put their own money up in exchange for equity, which could be intriguing. We're also seeing reports that they're shuttering parts of their multimedia package. That this $60 any shot any time thing they're going to shut down. So it's this interesting push and pull of where are we going to allocate resources to keep this thing alive, and what does it look like, which we continue to cover. But I think let's start with this, Smylie. I'm going to share this image to you that is via Josh Carpenter of the Sports Business Journal. And for everyone on YouTube, you can take a look at this of what these are mostly confirmed, but the ones that are expected, I believe, is just whatever we're going to call this, the Torrey Pines event, the second event of the year in January. And also it's been rumored there that as the Hawaii events have gone away, it will likely be Century. What do you think they're going to call that?
The Century Tournament or
the Century
Torrey
Tournament.
Pines.
Torrey Pines Classic, the Century. Yeah, let's we're workshopping today, baby. The Torrey Pines Century Classic.
I remember when Charles Schwab came on for Colonial, and I'd received a sponsor's invite into the Colonial that week, and like part of one of the things I had to do was try to guess what the name of the event was going to be the following year. We're coming up with all these possibilities of, and none of them were close to the Charles Schwab Challenge, like which is what it is. And we're throwing all these off the wall guesses that didn't hit.
This is a total tangent, but like, how do we arrive at, like, I know what an open is, right? Open insinuates there's open qualifying, right? Like we know what a championship is, but like we've got classic, we've got challenge. Like, do we need to get more names to refer to tournaments that aren't open qualifying or classified as a championship? I'd put that out.
Yeah. Okay. So I think one of my suggestions was, it's like the competition at Colonial, just
I like that.
Just keep it, very, very broad. Like, what is the competition? Could be anything. It could be barbecue eating. Could be a golf event.
That's okay. So barbecue eating
could be a high dive at the pool.
Remember the old Pro-Am name, the Bing Crosby Clam Bake. That used to be the AT&T. Like we need to start associating it with, like, if it's a Texas event, it's like the pig picking. Yeah, the Connecticut cook-off.
talk has been about sports betting handle being down or flat, right? Because of the threat of prediction markets and the growth of them. But we've seen Kalshi actually kind of plateau for the first time in recent memory. Looking at a graphic right now, we've had the spike for the Super Bowl, and then this is usually when things die down. Yes, there's March Madness, but usually sports betting handle kind of goes down over the course of spring and summer until we get back to football season.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
That's for Abdul Carter. Hey, son, you want to be a leader? Show up to meetings on time. Don't be late to practice. This guy's sitting there trying to tell me that he's got a problem with Jackson Dart going to a Trump rally when he can't even show up to a meeting on time? And he can't show up to practice and he's late? Dude.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
This is all about headlines, Donnie. Yep. If that noise gets louder as we get closer, then 45 cents is going to be 65 cents, and that's the repricing we're talking about. I don't need Utah to get them. I need people to think Utah is going to go up and get them, Donnie, and that's how you make money.
Prediction Markets Edge, only on SportsGrid.
Now we have to endure months of manufactured rumors about will he or won't he retire LeBron James. They are probably, Donnie, working on the Decision 2.0 for Amazon Prime as we speak. Is Jim Gray still around? But here is the beauty of the predictive markets. They make insufferable stories about insufferable people highly profitable.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Why aren't we marketing executives? Why aren't we marketing executives? I mean, this is like the second or third episode in a row where we're coming up. I know what it was. We were the special temporary membership consultants for Jackson Koiven. We have a whole suite of consulting services that we can offer. So back to the 2027 PGA Tour schedule. All right, this is what strikes me here, Smylie.
Can we come up with like our alternate list of what all of these events would be called if we had our choice?
Yeah. Okay. All right. So
I would start maybe at Valspar, like the Painted by You Championship, you know?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Or like the paint off. Like the Valspar paint off. You know what I mean? Like come up with something that's not championship.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
You know, the Valspar paint off is a great one. Let's like Valero. It should be like the Texas, like the oil drill, the Valero oil drill or something. You know, like we need some.
Okay,
really,
I like that.
You know what I'm saying? We need some really unique name of it, like just things that are very unique to that place and that setting. You know, the good old like, who wants to? Like, oh, you playing the oil drill this year? Like heck yeah, I'll be at the oil drill. It's gotta be great.
What about the playoff at Picasso? That's of course
the playoff
Tampa
Bay.
Wow, that's Valspar.
That's Valspar. I love that.
What do you think about that?
I love that. That's nice. That's really nice. You have a mascot. You could have a Picasso mascot going around with like a paint board. You know, like taking pictures of the kids.
Myrtle Beach. You know, it's sponsored by a jet company. How about just Flying High? And everybody just shows up and that could mean anything. Like everybody, you know, thinks that you can get high at the tournament. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that to me that one has to have surf in the name. You know, like it's kind of like, you know, the surf off or something or the, you know, I'm trying to think what a good, it's got to be something beachy. You know, it's like it's you know, we're at Myrtle Beach, call it the landing strip. You know, Myrtle Beach. This is a safe space. We're spit on.
Okay. that killed me.
I mean,
hold
this
on.
is
Is
just get us in a room.
Is Cognizant an eye company? Aren't they like
Nope.
visual? Or is that like, am I thinking of something different?
Cognizant, I think that's a great
Is that like
question.
a logistics? I thought they were like something in eye care. No,
They're AI builders bridging the gap from AI to impact. Cognizant
that
helps
is
companies
not an
modernize
eye company.
technology, reimagine processes, transform experiences so they stay ahead in a fast-changing world.
because if it was, I was going to suggest if it was like an eye company, it's like now you can see us, and instead it's just they just hire magicians to be on property, but it's an AI company, so I don't think magicians really.
What if they were
Makes a lot of
magicians that were like doing tricks to bridge the gap from AI to impact? How about that?
I okay. I still I like magicians somewhere in here because
We
who
need
doesn't like
magicians.
magicians?
Yes.
Dude, have you seen
Yes.
this guy? I know this is a tangent. Have you seen the bit of this guy who hires impersonators to come by his house? This guy will like hire like a Michael Jackson impersonator to come by his house to perform for like a party, except that there's no party. It's just him. It's like the Michael Jackson impersonator walks in and has to do his full bit just for this guy who's sitting there with the phone recording him. And then sometimes
amazing.
he'll hire multiple Michael Jackson impersonators. And so they all show up at the same time and have to perform while the others there. And it's okay. I know this is a magician thing, but it had me laugh and thinking about it. Like, can you imagine?
That's
Like,
so
like
good.
it's so awkward. You can't even like finish watching the whole thing. It's so stupid.
It's like, listen, buddy, you had a service and I contracted you for that service and I paid you. Perform. Like that's how it goes out here.
Like the oil rig championship.
The oil drill. Yeah, the oil rig
drill.
or the oil drill. I mean, I think that one gets lost in the calendar a little bit. Like if it's the oil drill, like I'm not missing that one. That's on my calendar every single year as a player.
I
Can't
think
miss
so
the oil
too.
drill.
Yeah,
With like an old Houston Oilers style logo.
Mhm.
You know, like come on now, man. There's a lot here that we could really.
So you're saying
we could
bring
really
back the
punch
clam bake for Pebble?
Bring back the clam bake, the oil drill, something surfy for Myrtle Beach and or the landing strip.
Or-
The bar.
I mean,
What
I was
else?
gonna say like maybe not cliff jumping or cliff diving for Torrey Pines. Not to like we don't want
Oh,
anybody doing that, but you know people are doing it all the time, and they the new logo
Yeah.
is the parachute, right?
I thought it was balloons out there. Isn't it hot air balloons? Am I
No, they're
wrong?
always jumping off with the
the paraglider.
parasailing. I think paraglider. That's what it is. Actually
The,
just
the
called
parasail. The parasail.
yeah. Just
Or the
just keep it
paraglide.
there.
Just call it that.
Yeah.
The paraglide at Torrey Pines presented by Century.
And Amex, it's at Palm Springs. Maybe we just call them at like the 401k.
That's okay. No, this you do this to me all the time. Where like we're transitioning, you slip it in, and I almost miss it. But for the 401k, pretty good. Here's what I was gonna suggest. There, right, is like it's always a low scoring there. All right, so what do we call it? We call it the shootout in the desert, presented by American Express.
The shootout? No, because I think that's what we called it already. Like these are
We just gotta get
we're-
weirder.
yeah, like the 401k.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
we're in the good spot there.
Well, okay,
parasailing. We
isn't
had
that
the
where
clam
Coachella?
bake.
Isn't that where the Coachella is? We should call it like the festival, like the golf Coachella or something. Golfcella,
Golfcella. Okay. Presented by 401k.
presented by. Okay, we're pulling from a lot of different buckets here creatively, which I like.
Is there anything that kind of goes with like luxury? Because like you can kind of maybe do that with Cadillac, like the
Cadillac or Genesis, right?
yeah.
You know, yeah. The man, I'm just thinking of like just leather interior. That's all. I can't get past the leather interior.
I'm also
I don't know if
thinking
that's a
about
good
like my
event
kids in the
name.
back seat screaming, and like how can we work that
Yeah.
in to
The toddler iPad presented by Cadillac.
or I'm a backseat championship.
PGA National is hard. So previous iterations like PGA National, hard. Bay Hill, hard. Sawgrass, hard. Ennisbrook, hard. So it's like you can't play all those in a row. And then it's like, hey, you know what would make this even harder? What do we put through the Blue Monster in there? So I don't know that it definitely doesn't help Cognizant being followed by another difficult Florida course. And I can definitely see what you're saying on the Valero Texas Open. I mean, I'm sorry, on the Valspar. I'm not wanting to follow the API there. I mean, I wonder if you have a guy like Scotty Scheffler, who was the runner-up at the Cadillac Championship this year to Cam Young, and then as obviously, as won a Players Championship, multiple, I believe, as won the Arnold Palmer Invitational, multiple, but he's going to go to Texas and play the Houston Open. There are no, which tournament does he end up taking off? I don't know that. I guess I'm just kind of I'm stream of consciousness here, but I'm trying to game out how the schedule planning looks for a lot of these guys.
You'll see some guys still play that Houston Open just as that last time you touch it, because some guys don't like to take 2 weeks off before a major. They're like, you know what, I'm just going to play 4 weeks in a row. I'm gonna have to deal with it. Some guys hate doing it, but it's kind of the schedule at hand. Or you might see some guys maybe add Valero this year, although it's maybe not the best version of a test before you go to Augusta. What I really notice about this schedule, we talked a lot about the first half of this in Florida and Texas, but the issue that we've had this year with the two Texas events, yes, it's convenient that you can go from Byron to Colonial. I think a lot of guys love to just be able to hop in a car and go from one to the next. But as you see in the schedule next year, Byron has been pushed up to late April, early May, which is the date in which that Cadillac Championship was this year. I think the golf course potentially will be better
less rain
than what we. Now, you never know in Texas. Like, you can have fronts come through at any portion of the spring to really make a golf course play extremely wet. So you never really know. You would expect to have wind, still in late April. The later in May you get, the less wind you might have. So that's obviously a plus. But one of the huge issues is that where these two events in Byron Nelson and Colonial stack up on this schedule that is so condensed, and when then they go to Memorial, RBC Canadian, and then the US Open, that at some point, coming off of a major championship at the PGA and also the Quail Hollow and RBC, how is Scotty Scheffler and Jordan Spieth, the two biggest draws in Texas, supposed to play 6 events in a row? No, Scotty Scheffler and Jordan Spieth not being in Colonial this week should be a crime. Like, that is an event that neither one of those two want to miss. They love playing in Texas. They get so much support, and they got to pick one or the other because they know the value of playing Memorial and being rested for the US Open. It's obviously solved next year, as you see the Colonial date isn't announced quite yet, but you see those two events are separated, which I think helps the Texas guys at least, and just the events in general, be able to market their stars that they expect to get to play in them.
Yeah, you expect Colonial to land after the PGA Championship as it has in previous years. But it's so interesting. And I think, I don't want to get off this right yet, but I do think as we kind of start moving forward to the 2028 PGA Tour schedule, and we talk about the 2 tracks that Brian Rolapp's laid out, the 120 player, first track, A track, Platinum Tour, whatever we want to call it, and the 140 player event, second track, that I wonder how much spacing we end up getting between events, whether it's on either side of majors and even how the promotion relegation works between those 2 tracks, because it just feels like that there are events here. I'd say it this way: if I'm a Cognizant, or I don't want to keep picking on Cognizant. I want to support Cognizant. It's at a historic venue. It's at a place that I love spending time down in Palm Beach, but they're kind of getting hosed on fields. I'd almost rather say, if we're going to be a track 2 event, or if we're going to be stuck here, like, just move us to track 2 where we can get a full field there.
We're already in a track 1. We're already in a track 1, track 2 system. And the only thing that we're missing are just more events opposite of a track 1 event is all we're missing. Really, that's all it comes down to. It. And I think we're eventually going to get into the fuller discussion of all of this. But before we get off of this schedule, the only thing I want to add, so with Valspar being moved to early May, I think some of my biggest concerns about that date for that championship is that, overseeding, especially for these Florida golf courses, typically happen at the beginning of the year, probably late fall. And you have it all the way through probably April or so, and then it dies off. So they're going to have to make a decision.
Craig Carton along with Tyrone Johnson. We got great news for you. CraigCartonShow.com. And Tyrone, what do you get if you go to that amazing website?
Well, right now you can subscribe to our upcoming newsletter. You put in your email address, and then bang, you'll get all the new Craig Carton Show content when it arrives.
Not just that, you also get merch drops, exclusive content, and appearances. So again, one more time, that website is CraigCartonShow.com.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
Well, the talk has been about sports betting handle being down or flat, right, because of the threat of prediction markets and the growth of them. But we've seen Kalshi actually kind of plateau for the first time in recent memory. Looking at a graphic right now, we've had the spike for the Super Bowl, and then this is usually when things die down. Yes, there's March Madness, but usually sports betting handle kind of goes down over the course of spring and summer until we get back to football season.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
For Abdul Carter. Hey, son, you want to be a leader? Show up to meetings on time. Don't be late to practice. This guy's sitting there trying to tell me that he's got a problem with Jackson Dart going to a Trump rally when he can't even show up to a meeting on time and he can't show up to practice and he's late? Dude.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
So let's turn the page to the 2028 schedule, and this is something that's been out there reported for a while now. A lot of different, Sports Business Journal, amongst others, contributed to the reports that is sort of crystallizing statements that Brian Rolapp has made and setting the table for what it could look like. So here's just a breakdown of everything we know thus far. So there are major changes planned for 28. There was a meeting at the Truist where the tour presented players with the concept of a plan that would include 2 tiers or tracks, right? Under the plan presented those players, track 1 would include 23 elevated tournaments. Those consist of 16 regular season PGA Tour events, 3 FedEx Cup playoff events, and 4 majors. The regular season tournaments in track 1 will be expected to have 120-man fields, and track 1's also expected to include at least 3 new markets. And some of those markets that are under consideration for new track 1 events include Boston, Philadelphia, Denver, Nashville, San Francisco. A lot of people wondering why Chicago's not on that list. Maybe they already consider Chicago a market and use for both the President's Cup and the BMW Championship. So not necessarily ruling it out, but just saying it's not considered new defined by the standards Rolapp's looking at. And so Sports Business Journal previously reported additional interest from the tour in the Seattle market. Sahali, I can never say it right, but they hosted the 1998 PGA Championship, a very narrow venue a lot of people really loved. Multiple people said the tour has been seeking as much as $30 million annually from potential title sponsors for new events.
Bizarre.
What's that? Yeah,
bizarre.
Yeah.
If anything, with the LIV, I wouldn't say fund or failing, but you would think that it would almost be a pullback, but it's the opposite. They're going to be charging more.
Apparently that is what they got for the Cadillac Championship. Or Sports Business Journal has reported that they were seeking that or got that for that event. So track 2 in this proposed structure includes 20 tournaments, and those have 140 man fields. And not immediately clear what the cadence of those track 2 tournaments would be. Also unclear what the downstream effects would be on the Korn Ferry Tour and the PGA Tour Americas. All this is not finalized. None of this, it's all subject to change. And there's a meeting planned the week after the U.S. Open at the Travelers with another update. And I believe, if I had this correct, that when Brian Rolapp addressed the media, I was there sitting there for that address at Ponte Vedra. That there will also be a media update that week at the Travelers with more info on this. So, and also last week there was some meetings to Byron Nelson. We've had some reporting come out of that, but nothing necessarily tangible that changes what we know for 2028. So a lot of information there. I think the best place to start, Smylie, is that we have talked on the show really since its inception about the idea of doing better stratification or identification of the Platinum Tour and whatever the regular rank and file tour is. That feels like the track system to me, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sitting here just doing a little bit of counting, trying to figure out the 20 events in track 2 and how that would be any different than what we're experiencing now in the PGA Tour. And honestly, just doing the basic math, if they're excluding the fall schedule in this, it adds up to be about the exact same thing we've been working with for the most part. So I don't know if there'd be a little crossover on some of these weeks that might have a track 2 or track 1 event, but I think what we're doing is just there is a distinction now in that in this marketplace, when the PGA Tour goes to these sponsors, they're basically showing and guaranteeing what they're going to be buying and purchasing, where in this current market that we have right now for the PGA Tour, you are going to a Charles Schwab. Colonial has always traditionally gotten great fields, but now it's based off the date, and where it lies. Like you don't have Scotty Scheffler and Jordan Spieth playing at the Charles Schwab this year. And it's going to those types of sponsors and say, hey, this is what you're paying for. These are the type of players that you are going to expect to be playing in your event. And it may deter some sponsors to want to be a track 2 event. It may not affect sponsors at all. Some people just want to be affiliated with the PGA Tour and the market and the reach that they get from the event and what it does just for the general community. So with all that being said, Troy, I'm looking at all this and I guess really the big takeaway is that with 23 potentially track 1 events, 16, that number's coming up, right? So we're typically dealing with around how many events do you think on the PGA Tour with signature events? Is it around excluding the majors?
Signatures only.
Yes. Yeah.
I believe it was 8 or 9. I mean,
that's what I had in my head. I just wanted to make sure. So we're basically doubling that up. And so in the only world in which this works is that there will be a track 1 event and a track 2 event happening at the same time, maybe 8 times a year. And what I like about this is that it's giving more players opportunity to play
8 events. Just double check.
Yeah. So it's giving more players. So 120 players versus 70 or whatever the silly number is that we've seen in signature events. So now you're getting more players that are playing in these big signature events with potential of promotion relegation is what we hope. And I like that there's 140 players playing in track 2, which is it's a big number. And I think it's a fair and safe number to get players around and making sure at the beginning of the part of the year that you can get cuts to where guys are finishing. So you got 260 players. That's a pretty big number that are affiliated under the PGA Tour model. Now, the question that you and I had talked about earlier about this is that track 2, the 140 players, is that Korn Ferry or is that PGA Tour still? And will players that come off the Korn Ferry to get their card, where will they be, the number 1 player off the Korn Ferry? Will they just go straight to track 1? How will they be able to, not make the Korn Ferry Tour feel like it's 2 steps away from the PGA Tour. So that's like the most interesting part from my standpoint, is how they navigate this track 2, because it's not terribly different than what we're dealing with now. It's just that you're adding more signature events that might take eyeballs away from a track 2 event if they happen to be played on the same week.
Well, I think, and I was also, if this is some of the stuff that you stated here, like please jump in here. But I was also just doing some schedule comparisons while you were talking, and this is blind speculation, right? Based on what we think it could be, and it probably will look a lot different once Rolapp rolls out the full plan. But if we're talking about 16 events that are not accessible to the full tour, that they're whatever signature event, whatever we're going to call it, and then you're looking at the 20 track 2 events. So if we're assuming that those are always going to have opposite field events against them, like that every week's going to have 2 events, right? Then that leaves 4 additional events beyond the 16 track 1 events that are, unspoken, unallocated in terms of schedule, not locked in for track 2. And we've also heard the possibility that the tour could take weeks off before or after majors. So there's your 4 there. So I'm wondering, if you start to read the tea leaves, if what we're looking at is that this track 2 is effectively a plussed up version of the Korn Ferry Tour, which that's going to be interesting from a business perspective. And then we get that break where there are 4 these featured track 2 events. That's the only show in town during these set weeks when they're taking a break before or after a major. That's just sort of a guess, but one that's hopefully a little bit educated by what we've heard.
Yeah, totally. And I think if you do the math too, 20 events isn't enough for 140 guys. Like they would rather have, closer to, 25 to 30 events that they can go and play. So, they're playing for a little bit less money, but they need more than 20. So in my mind, I'm guessing that those 20 tournaments are from the beginning of the year all the way, through the play or, before the playoffs. And then the fall is reserved for, everybody goes and dukes it out from whether you have new guys from the Korn Ferry Tour that get their feet wet, which I've always thought that these guys who get their cards on the Korn Ferry Tour should be playing in the fall.
just did some quick math on that. There were 31 playing weeks this season.
Okay.
So that's interesting too. Like to go down to 23 now. Now you're shrinking one of those already. We didn't have the Century this year, so really it's going forward. You're at 30 effective potential playing weeks for the 2028 season. So there are going to be some gaps in the schedule.
And crossover.
Yeah, and then obviously I don't think they're really including these or outlining fall events in the announcement of these two tracks, because I still think the fall is a major question mark. And this starts to kind of bleed into our discussion with LIV of, one of the things Brian Rolapp talked about is at that players address was trying to go internationally more, and trying to kind of maybe find some, really strengthening that partnership with the DP World Tour, and maybe making more of those events co-sanctioned. He didn't say anything about that specifically, but he alluded to going abroad more often and playing
that
a
would
global
help the
game.
track two guys.
Help the track two guys.
It would help the DP World Tour fields. It would give guys more opportunities to play in other places. And you and I spoke about this earlier, and I didn't know if it sounded stupid, but we have to talk about it.
Yeah.
What if the PGA Tour now purchased LIV in those 10 international events? And I don't know what that would look like, but I do like the idea of the PGA Tour going to a place to where, okay, LIV runs all these events. Now, what can they provide? Well, they have players that they can send and play. Now, it may totally ruin their team model in this, which I don't think LIV is going to let go of, because that seems to be something that they think is going to be the revenue driver for their league and its future. So maybe it doesn't make any sense, but what does make sense is, and you just kind of talked about it, is if the PGA Tour strengthen their relationships with the DP World or with these National Open events, all of a sudden you get all these PGA Tour players going and playing in those. Now they might not be the track one guys, but you might get some guys that might go play.
That's right.
But I think another discussion we need to have is how it was rumored that track one guys will be strongly discouraged from playing in track two events. And I just want to get your thoughts on that, because that all of a sudden feels against what the PGA Tour policy is on. You can't really tell us what we can and can't play in, right? That's not in our bylaws.
And I think this is where it's going to get very interesting to see how the schedule itself is composed of how many, like, what I just said a couple of minutes ago, like if in one iteration, we're assuming that all 16 of the track one events match up exactly with the track two event, and there are 4 extra track two events left out there. That's certainly one possibility, but there could be other possibilities where there are weeks where track one guys aren't playing and they could go play in a track two event because it has a hometown tie. Let's just say that, one of these Texas events was on a week where there wasn't a track one event, and they really want to have Scotty Scheffler come play, and the PGA Tour is saying, hey, we really prefer you to leave that opportunity for the guys that are trying to earn promotion through track two. I think, look, there are going to be, pain points, pressure points around the change to this system, like there is with anything. But I do think that this creates better definition as to what the PGA Tour is and what the pathways are to playing their way on it. And it gets away from the things that we disliked, these, 70, 80 player, no cut, limited field events, like back to 120 with cuts, and then a larger 140 man field where you can play your way in. Like I do kind of like the idea of, like, I think there are times where even we're talking about the FedEx Cup fall, where guys in these last few years had to continue playing to stay one top 125 and now top 100 to retain their card. But there are guys showing up and playing who were, top 50 or made it to East Lake. They're already good next year. Like, yeah. I didn't love that they're taking spots away from guys who, now I understand from an event perspective, selling against it, you want to have the biggest and best field you could possibly have. But I can understand wanting a little bit of a separation between, track one and track two, simply to make sure the system works the way that it is intended to enable playing opportunities for these guys who are trying to kind of work their way into track one.
So another thought here is that with track two and potentially, where and when that would air. I think we're all very familiar how track one works with network coverage, taking it on the weekend on Saturday and Sunday. So let's talk about what potentially could happen if you have these crossovers between these track 1 and track 2 events. So I think a fear that you would have is that you would split your audience. Now, it wouldn't be a 50-50 split, but even if you take viewers away from your premier product, that doesn't seem like a good business model for the PGA Tour, who relies heavily on good ratings. And would you be a person that would flip it on, name the event on Golf Channel to watch an X event that's more interesting, that has a better enticing leaderboard, or a golf course you like, or somebody who's in the field, you want to watch them, versus a Cam Young 7-shot lead runaway at Doral that's happening on? It's like, actually I kind of like sports that are close, so I'm gonna go flip it on there. The other thing I want to mention too is that Brian Rolapp, coming from the NFL and being a person who dealt with all these different networks and really expanded the NFL's reach, going to many different streaming services like Netflix and Amazon, and of course like the Peacocks of the world of and CBS, I'm sure with Paramount has gotten involved in that whole streaming universe with the NFL. But now when you think about Brian Rolapp on what he potentially could do for the PGA Tour on that note, this screams to me that these track 2 events could potentially have an Amazon or Netflix come in and sponsor these events to continue to grow the overall reach of the PGA Tour. So that's something that interests me. But are you splitting your audience a little bit, trying to draw away from your premier products? That would be the one question I would have there.
I think you're dead on. And I think that a lot of this is going to be sort of a trial balloon. It's like, the reality of the world we live in is that it used to be that ESPN was this behemoth that, printed money through local rights, carriage fees. And then as the linear television model changed and shifted and evolved, that's not the case anymore. And the competitors that are entering the space, like the Amazons and Netflix, have much deeper pockets, right? And so I wouldn't be shocked if, Brian Rolapp went back to an executive he has a great relationship with from his days at the NFL and said, "Hey, what do you think about taking, some of the it's behind the prime paywall, whatever. You have to have a subscription, but let's just see what it's like to produce golf on this platform and see what we like and we don't like. And then guess what? Next time there's a rights deal that's up, there are multiple competitors for."
Hey there, it's your buddy Craig Carton. If you're trying to find out how to get all the great content that me and Tyrone Johnson give you every single day, here's Tyrone to tell you how.
You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and of course, Amazon Music as well. We're at all 4.
That's right. It's the Craig Carton Show podcast every weekday morning, live at 11, replayed at noon on YouTube and on SportsGrid throughout the country. Check it out.
They're trading right now currently at 74 wins on the season, which means the Kalshi marketplace goes by 5-win intervals. 75-plus wins for those Houston Astros. That's a 49% contract to the yes, which a $100 investment pays back $205, Greg. I'm not high on this team. Look, again, 75 wins for the Astros is terrible, but this team might not even look the same as where we stand today by the time we get to that deadline.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
For Abdul Carter. Hey, son, you want to be a leader? Show up to meetings on time. Don't be late to practice. This guy's sitting there trying to tell me that he's got a problem with Jackson Dart going to a Trump rally when he can't even show up to a meeting on time? And he can't show up to practice and he's late? Dude.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
That's a good way to make a living. But the only other thing that we'll mention is that it really, really makes it challenging for coaches who coach guys on both different sides. We've talked to Josh Gregory about this. And he's guys that had, like, what do you do? Do you invest in the guys that ultimately pay you more? Or do you, just tell your guys that, hey, I'll try to make one when I can? Like, who could travel every week to go see their, guys on both tours? It's so much better when you have 10 guys at the same place versus 5 and 5. And so now I think you'll start to see players on that track too have to become more self-reliant on their on how they get better, because they don't have their whole network of guys that potentially could be there. So that's another thing that's kind of, it's not like terribly important for us to kind of talk about. It's more so the players to deal with, but it's just another issue that's kind of being created through all this.
Better have a good PJ deal to get back and forth from all these places. I mean, I think, and it feels like we're close to wrapping here, but I think there are a couple things that I just wanted to, that you mentioned, that are worth kind of putting a bow on. One is on the back to broadcast rights partners. Is like, I think those conversations are going to be very interesting, because if you have an Amazon that comes in and says, hey, look, we did this successfully at the Masters and went off without a hitch, we could do this early PGA Tour live window, then you're sort of nudging ESPN to say, hey, what else can you offer? And we saw the experiment earlier this year at the Farmers Insurance Open. Brooks Koepka's return to LIV. Hey, big ticket event. We're going to put it on linear television. Like, if you could start working back and forth saying, well, what are you going to give me? What are you going to give me? And all of a sudden we have, instead of having a subscription to PGA Tour Live or, ESPN Plus, that PGA Tour Live, it's like we can flip on ESPN or ESPN2 and get morning window coverage before they pass it off to Golf Channel. Like, that's an interesting value add for the PGA Tour. What else can you come with Amazon? So I think that there are a ton of permutations there that could really, again, to get back to what Rolapp's main drive is going to be, enhance the product. And I think the other two is, you mentioned buying LIV, and I think it's worth just detailing why that could be an intriguing one, because at one point in time, there was this potential deal on the table where the tour was going to assume control of LIV. The PIF was going to get some sort of equity in the PGA Tour enterprise to set up. But it was Jay Monahan was going to oversee LIV, and they were going to do away with team golf, and
they weren't.
LIV did not want to do away with team golf, and LIV did not agree with the valuation that SSG and the PGA Tour enterprises put on their league. And so I think even if you were now to go to, because the PIF, despite pulling funding, still have an ownership stake in LIV. So if the tour were to go to them, I would assume there'd still be some level of hardball being played, and just deciding how much, and then if LIV gets to a point where they're filing for bankruptcy, what type of bankruptcy are they filing for, and what does that mean for PIF's ownership stake in that league? So it's and we've had a lot of smart commenters chime in on the minutia of bankruptcy and things like that. But I guess I just wanted to run through those things before we got off, because there's so much minutia to all this stuff. It is a rapidly changing business and product world. And I know that we're here because we love golf. We love talking about it, but we're talking about how we're going to consume the game at the pro level going forward. So it's important stuff to detail.
100%. And it's been going on for the last 5 years of how the PGA Tour is going to take reshape of what the future might look like. And I think we're starting to see finally over the top of the hill what it could look like. And I don't mind the view. I think the players are going to eventually like it. It might take some time for them to really understand it, to see, you got to go through a full year to really understand if you like it or don't like it. But from just looking at the numbers and potentially the amount of players that could potentially play, and not limiting it to too tight where it feels like a WGC, I think are all good things. Now, what will happen with the PGA Tour's relationship with the DP World Tour and potentially getting more PGA Tour players playing over there, and ultimately what happens with LIV heading into 2027 will remain something we talk about.
Yeah. I can't believe that's how we concluded this section of the episode that began with us renaming the Valero Texas Open the Oil Drill. So I hope you enjoyed that.
Let's fly high out of here, buddy.
That's a good segue, because we're going to fly on over to Smylie in the airport recapping the Charles Schwab Challenge. So we'll enjoy that, close the episode. And then on Wednesday, Josh Gregory dropping. That's going to be a good one. Like, you want to do some swing nerd stuff, you want to yet again have some stuff to work on with your short game, do not miss Josh Gregory on Wednesday.
We'll see you next week on the Golf Channel. This has been The Smylie Show.
You know, I listen to this podcast. It's really cool. And
all of our local fans and subscribers, but make sure you like and subscribe.
It's cool to see what you guys are doing. I know golf fans appreciate it, but we do too, so please keep it up.
For all the good people at YouTube, like and subscribe.
You guys have some good takes, so I'm happy to come on and shoot the